Imagine walking into a cave and finding a family that has been waiting 50,000 years to tell their story. In the rugged mountains of northern Iraq, hidden within the limestone walls of Shanidar Cave, lies one of humanity's most profound secrets. Not treasure, not gold, but something far more valuable: the truth about who we really are. This is the story of Nandy, a Neanderthal man whose broken body became proof of love, whose scars became evidence of compassion, whose life shattered every assumption we held about our ancient relatives. But Nandy wasn't alone in that cave. Beside him lay Shanidar Z, a woman whose face we've brought back to life from 200 shattered bone fragments. Together, they reveal a shocking truth. Neanderthals weren't the primitive brutes of our imagination. They were artists who painted in darkness 65,000 years ago, chefs who seasoned their food with wild herbs, engineers who created the world's first rope, families who cared for their disabled with a tenderness that spans millennia. You carry their DNA in your blood, their creativity in your art, their capacity for love in your heart. Everything you thought you knew about human evolution is about to change, because this isn't just their story, it's ours, and it begins in a world far harsher than anything we can imagine, where survival demanded not just strength, but something much more powerful: the ability to care for each other, to care for... Welcome to Nandy's world. Picture this: a world where winter wasn't just cold, it was a death sentence, where a broken bone meant starvation, where the howl of a wolf in the distance could end everything you'd ever known. This was Nandy's reality 50,000 years ago. Nandy grew up in the Zagros Mountains of what we now call Iraq, in a landscape so brutal it would break modern humans within days. Temperatures plummeted to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Snow buried the ground for months. Food disappeared entirely for weeks at a time. Yet somehow, in this frozen wasteland, a little Neanderthal boy learned to laugh, to play, to dream. Childhood was precious and perilous. Imagine a 2-year-old Nandy, his small fingers carefully selecting colorful shells from an ancient riverbed, completely absorbed in his innocent discovery. But his mother's eyes never stopped scanning the tree line, because in the shadows, a pack of cave hyenas watched and waited, their hunger as sharp as winter wind. Every moment of joy was borrowed from death. But Shanidar Cave offered something revolutionary: not just shelter, but sanctuary. This wasn't merely a hole in the rock where early humans huddled for warmth. Archaeological evidence from the past 20 years reveals something extraordinary. Shanidar was home to an entire Neanderthal family across multiple generations. 10 individuals have been discovered here so far: grandparents, parents, children, even infants. This cave held the world's oldest known family cemetery, a testament to bonds that death could not break. And at the heart of it all stood a massive limestone boulder over 6 feet tall that had crashed down from the cave ceiling long before the first Neanderthal ever set foot inside. Most creatures would have seen this fallen rock as an obstacle, something to work around or ignore. But the Neanderthals saw something else entirely: a monument. They chose this boulder as their sacred landmark, the beating heart of their family legacy. Generation after generation, they returned to this exact spot to lay their loved ones to rest, not scattered randomly throughout the cave, but deliberately, purposefully, right here beside this ancient stone marker. This wasn't accident, this wasn't convenience, this was tradition, sophisticated, emotional, deeply human tradition. Think about what this means. These so-called primitive beings understood abstract concepts like sacred space, family legacy, and the continuity of generations. They grasped that some places hold meaning beyond the physical, that love can designate a location as holy. The boulder became their Westminster Abbey, their Arlington Cemetery, a place where grief transformed into reverence, where death became not an ending, but a homecoming. In the sediment layers around this stone, archaeologists have found evidence of repeated ritual behavior spanning thousands of years. Flowers may have been placed with the dead. Pollen grains suggest Neanderthals understood the symbolic power of beauty in the face of loss. Tools were buried alongside loved ones, indicating belief in some form of afterlife or continued existence. But perhaps most remarkably, they kept returning. Generation after generation chose this cave, this boulder, this sacred ground. They could have gone anywhere in the vast Zagros Mountains. They could have buried their dead in the soft earth outside, where digging would have been easier. Instead, they came home to the place where their ancestors rested, to the community that transcended death itself. And Nandy's world was harsh beyond imagination, but it was also filled with a love so powerful it created humanity's first permanent memorial. In choosing to honor their dead in this sacred space, Neanderthals revealed something profound about the human spirit, that even in the darkest times we create meaning, we build traditions, we refuse to let those we love simply disappear into the void. The massive boulder still stands in Shanidar Cave today, a silent witness to 50,000 years of human devotion. When modern archaeologists first discovered it, they found something beautiful. The stone had been deliberately shaped and smoothed by countless Neanderthal hands over millennia. Each generation had touched this monument, adding their own small contribution to its sacred surface. This was Nandy's inheritance, not just survival skills or hunting techniques, but something far more valuable, the knowledge that love persists beyond death, that family bonds transcend time itself, and that even in a world of brutal hardship, humans can create something eternal. But growing up in this harsh landscape required more than love. It demanded skills that would challenge a Navy SEAL, and Nandy was about to learn that survival in his world meant mastering technologies more sophisticated than anything we'd previously attributed to Neanderthals, skills that would rewrite our understanding of prehistoric intelligence forever. At 4 years old, most modern children are learning to tie their shoes. At 4 years old, Nandy was learning to knap flint because his life depended on it. Watch him now, crouched by the fire, his small hands wrapped around a piece of limestone twice the size of his fist. His father guides those tiny fingers, showing him exactly where to strike, how to angle the blow, where to apply pressure. One wrong move and the stone shatters uselessly. Get it right, and you create a blade sharper than a surgeon's scalpel. This wasn't child's play. This was PhD-level engineering disguised as survival. Nandy had to master skills that would challenge a modern craftsman with years of training, crafting stone tools that could slice through mammoth hide, processing meat in ways that extracted every possible calorie, hunting techniques that required the stealth of a ninja and the patience of a sniper. Archaeological evidence from sites across Spain reveals something extraordinary. Neanderthal children were practicing these complex skills from the age of 3, tiny hand axes, perfectly proportioned but miniature. Practice cuts on animal bones, showing the steady progression from clumsy attempts to masterful precision. But here's where our understanding of Neanderthal intelligence explodes into revolutionary territory. They didn't just make tools, they engineered systems. The Levallois technique, developed by Neanderthals 300,000 years ago, represents one of humanity's first mass production technologies. Picture this. Instead of making one tool at a time, Neanderthals learned to create pre-shaped stone cores like prehistoric assembly lines. They could strike these prepared cores and produce dozens of identical sharp-edged flakes, each one a perfect cutting tool. This meant something extraordinary for nomadic people. They could travel hundreds of miles from flint quarries and still manufacture tools whenever needed. No more being trapped near raw material sources, no more choosing between exploration and equipment. This was prehistoric logistics at its finest. But the discovery that truly shattered our preconceptions came in 2020 when archaeologists found something impossible: a 3-ply rope fragment, twisted from inner tree bark, attached to a 50,000-year-old stone tool. Rope. Think about what rope making requires. You need to understand tensile strength, fiber properties, twisting mathematics. You need to grasp that individual weak strands, when combined correctly, become stronger than the sum of their parts. You need spatial reasoning, sequential thinking, and what cognitive scientists call hierarchical planning, the ability to envision multiple steps toward a complex goal. This isn't instinct, this is advanced engineering. And Nandy was learning it at an age when modern children are still figuring out crayons. The implications are staggering. With rope, Neanderthals could make fishing nets, hunting snares, carrying bags, clothing, even primitive boats. Rope unlocked technologies that wouldn't appear in our archaeological record for tens of thousands of years. They weren't just surviving, they were innovating, creating tools to make life easier. But let's return to young Nandy, because his education encompassed far more than technology. He learned to read the landscape like a book. That slight discoloration in the soil meant water lay 3 feet down. Those scratches on the tree bark revealed which animals passed this way and when. The angle of grass stems told him wind direction and weather patterns hours in advance. He mastered the art of patience, sitting motionless for 6 hours to ambush a single rabbit because protein meant the difference between life and death. He developed hand-eye coordination that would shame an Olympic archer, throwing stones with accuracy that could bring down birds in mid-flight. Most remarkably, he learned empathy. Archaeological evidence shows Neanderthal children caring for disabled community members from an early age. They understood that strength came not from individual prowess, but from collective support. A broken member of the tribe wasn't abandoned. They were protected, valued, integrated into the survival strategy. This was emotional intelligence developing alongside technical mastery. Nandy's teachers weren't just his parents. The entire community invested in his education. Elderly Neanderthals who could no longer hunt became living libraries, teaching critical skills through storytelling and demonstration. Each adult specialized in different techniques. One excelled at hide preparation, another at bone carving, a third at identifying edible plants. Knowledge was communal property, passed down through generations with the same care given to crafting the finest tools. And the learning never stopped. Even as Nandy mastered basic survival skills, he began exploring advanced techniques that archaeologists are only now beginning to understand. Heat treatment of stone tools, heating flint to specific temperatures to improve its knapping qualities, hafting technologies that bonded stone blades to wooden handles using tree resins and sinew, composite tool creation that combined multiple materials for maximum efficiency. By his 10th birthday, Nandy possessed skills that represented 300,000 years of accumulated human knowledge. He could start fire in driving rain, track animals across solid rock, create cutting tools sharper than modern razors, fashion containers that could hold water, manufacture rope strong enough to drag a cave bear. But perhaps most importantly, he learned to innovate. Archaeological sites show clear evidence that Neanderthal children weren't just copying their elders, they were experimenting, trying new approaches, occasionally discovering better methods. This was a culture that valued creative problem-solving alongside traditional knowledge. The boy who once fumbled with his first piece of flint had become a master craftsman, hunter, and engineer. His hands, now steady and sure, could create tools that would last decades. His mind, trained through constant challenge and practice, could adapt to any survival scenario. Yet even as Nandy grew into these remarkable abilities, fate was preparing a test that would challenge everything he'd learned, a test that would transform him from a skilled young hunter into something unprecedented in human history, a living symbol of what it means to survive against impossible odds. Because Nandy's greatest lessons weren't going to come from success, they were going to come from catastrophic injury and the discovery that sometimes the most profound strength comes not from what we can do, but from what others choose to do for us. It happened on what should have been an ordinary hunting day. Nandy, now a skilled young hunter, was tracking a wounded deer through the rocky terrain near Shanidar Cave. The animal had fled up a steep cliff face and Nandy followed, his confidence built from years of successful hunts. Then everything went wrong. The ledge crumbled beneath his feet. Nandy plummeted 30 feet, his body slamming into the jagged rocks below with a sickening crack that echoed through the canyon. When the dust settled, the promising young hunter lay motionless, his future seemingly shattered along with his bones. What happened next would redefine our understanding of prehistoric humanity forever. The injuries Nandy sustained would have killed most people instantly. Modern medical analysis of his skeleton reveals trauma so severe it reads like a horror story written in bone. A crushing blow to the left side of his head, possibly from the rock impact, damaged his orbital socket so severely that his eye was likely destroyed completely. The force was so tremendous it fractured the skull and damaged the brain tissue controlling the right side of his body. This wasn't just a head injury, this was catastrophic brain trauma. The neurological damage cascaded through his entire right side. His right arm began to wither and atrophy, the muscles slowly dying as the damaged brain could no longer send proper signals. What had once been a strong hunter's arm became a useless appendage, shorter and weaker than his left, the bones themselves changing shape as the muscles disappeared. His right leg suffered similarly devastating damage. The same brain injury that crippled his arm left his leg partially paralyzed, forcing him to develop a pronounced limp that would mark every step for the rest of his life. But the injuries didn't stop there. One of the middle bones in his right foot shows clear evidence of a fracture that healed poorly, likely from the initial fall or from subsequent accidents caused by his disability. Every step would have reminded him of that terrible day, pain shooting through his foot with each labored movement. Picture the reality of Nandy's new existence, half blind, partially paralyzed, forced to navigate a world where physical strength meant survival. In any other species, in any other time, this would have been a death sentence. Yet somehow, incredibly, Nandy lived. Not just for days or weeks, but for decades. Medical analysis shows that all of his injuries had time to heal completely. The bone fractures knitted back together, the damaged tissues adapted to their new limitations. Most remarkably, Nandy lived to be between 35 and 45 years old, considered elderly for a Neanderthal, an age when even healthy individuals struggled to survive. How is this possible? The answer challenges everything we thought we knew about prehistory. In 2018, 58 years after Nandy's discovery, archaeologist Dr. Emma Pomeroy made a find that would complete the Shanidar family story in the most extraordinary way. Deep in the same sacred ground where Nandy rested, her trowel struck something that shouldn't have been there, more bone fragments, but these were different, smaller, more delicate. What emerged from the earth was the crushed skull of another family member, compressed into over 200 fragments, no bigger than your thumbnail. The head had been flattened to just 2 centimeters thick, about the width of a coin, by 75,000 years of geological pressure and rockfall. Most archaeologists would have given up. The puzzle seemed impossible. But Dr. Pomeroy and her team saw something else, an opportunity to meet a member of Nandy's family face to face. For 9 months, conservator Lucia Lopez Pauline worked with the precision of a master jeweler, using micro-CT scans and specialized glue to piece together what seemed like an impossible 3D jigsaw puzzle. Fragment by fragment, bone by bone, a face emerged from the stone, not just any face, but the face of a woman who lived and loved and died in the same sacred space as Nandy. They called her Shanidar Z, and her story would revolutionize our understanding of Neanderthal family life. Shanidar Z was approximately 45 years old when she died. Ancient by Neanderthal standards, a matriarch who had survived decades in the harshest environment on Earth. Her reconstructed features reveal a face marked by wisdom and experience, with the distinctive, heavy brow ridge and robust bone structure of her people, yet somehow unmistakably gentle, unmistakably human. But it wasn't just her face that told a story. It was how she was buried. When archaeologists carefully excavated around her remains, they discovered something that took their breath away. Shanidar Z hadn't been hastily dumped in the ground. She had been laid to rest with the same care and reverence reserved for the most beloved family members. She lay in what researchers call the sleeping position, curled on her side as if she had simply drifted off to sleep and never woken up. Her left hand was tucked gently under her head, fingers slightly curved, serving as a natural pillow in death, as it might have in life during countless nights by the fire. Even more remarkably, a carefully selected rock had been placed behind her head, not randomly, but deliberately positioned to provide additional support, like a stone cushion ensuring her eternal comfort. This wasn't the action of people simply disposing of a body. This was the behavior of a family saying goodbye to someone they cherished. The location of her burial revealed the deepest secrets of Neanderthal family tradition. Shanidar Z was found in the exact same sacred cluster where Nandy rested, right behind that massive 6-foot boulder that had served as the family's memorial landmark for generations. But she wasn't alone in the sacred ground. Archaeological investigation revealed that Shanidar Z was actually the 5th individual discovered in this precise location, a family cemetery that had been in continuous use for thousands of years. The bodies weren't scattered randomly throughout the vast cave. They were deliberately placed together in the same area, following the same burial traditions. Each burial told the same story, bodies positioned in similar sleeping poses, all facing the same direction, all oriented toward the sacred boulder that marked this ground as special. This wasn't coincidence. This was tradition passed down through generations, a sophisticated understanding of sacred space and family continuity that rivals any modern cemetery. The implications are staggering. Picture what this means. Neanderthal families returning to Shanidar Cave year after year, generation after generation, specifically to bury their loved ones in this consecrated ground. Young Neanderthals grew up knowing that when their time came, they would join their ancestors beside the sacred stone. But perhaps most remarkably, recent analysis suggests that Shanidar Z and Nandy might have been contemporaries, possibly even living in the cave at the same time, sharing the same fires and the same meals, the same daily struggles for survival. They might have known each other, cared for each other, been part of the same extended family network that made Nandy's survival possible. When we look at Shanidar Z's reconstructed face, created by Dutch paleo artists Adrie and Alphonse Kennis, something extraordinary becomes clear. Yes, her skull has the characteristic heavy brow ridges of Neanderthals. Yes, she lacks the pronounced chin of modern humans. But when flesh and muscle are restored to bone, when life returns to ancient features, the similarities to ourselves become undeniable. This is a face you might pass on the street without a second glance, if you could overlook the robust bone structure and distinctive features. The eyes hold intelligence and warmth. The mouth suggests someone capable of both sternness and laughter. This isn't the brutish caricature of popular imagination, but a fully realized human being with her own personality, her own experiences, her own capacity for love and loss. The reconstruction makes it easy to understand how interbreeding occurred between Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. These weren't two incompatibly different species meeting in the wilderness. These were closely related human populations who could recognize in each other the same intelligence, the same emotional depth, the same fundamental humanity that transcends physical differences. Shanidar Z's burial also reveals sophisticated understanding of death and its meaning within Neanderthal culture, the care taken in her positioning, the provision of comfort items, the selection of sacred ground. All point to beliefs about dignity in death, the continuation of identity beyond life, and the importance of maintaining connection between the living and the dead. Most remarkably, evidence suggests that her burial was part of a larger ritual tradition. Microscopic analysis of the soil around her remains shows traces of charred food particles, nuts, grasses, wild seeds, indicating that cooking and food preparation occurred near the burial site. This wasn't just a cemetery. This was a place where life and death intersected, where families gathered to honor their ancestors while continuing the business of survival. Dr. Pomeroy describes this pattern as uniquely Neanderthal. There does not appear to be that clear separation between life and death. Persistent use of places in both life and death is a significant Neanderthal trademark. It's another aspect we share with these ancestors. The continuous use of Shanidar Cave for both daily living and ancestral burial speaks to a sophisticated understanding of place, memory, and family identity. This wasn't just practical use of available shelter. This was the creation of sacred space where the living could maintain connection with those who came before, where children could learn family history by literally living among their ancestors. But Shanidar Z's story reveals something even more profound about Neanderthal society. Analysis of wear patterns on her teeth and bones suggests she lived a physically demanding life well into her 40s. Remarkable longevity that required the same kind of community support that kept Nandy alive. She, too, would have needed care in her final years, protection from predators, assistance with daily tasks. The fact that both Nandy and Shanidar Z achieved such advanced ages in the same community suggests that caring for elderly and disabled members wasn't exceptional charity, but standard practice. The Shanidar family had developed what we might recognize as the first known social safety net, a cultural commitment to ensuring that every member of the community could live with dignity regardless of their physical capabilities. As we stand in Shanidar Cave today, looking at the sacred boulder where these remarkable people chose to bury their loved ones, we're witnessing more than an archaeological site. We're seeing the birthplace of traditions that continued to define human civilization, the reverence for family, the care for vulnerable members of society, the creation of sacred spaces where memory and love transcend death itself. But the Shanidar family's influence extends far beyond their cave in the Zagros Mountains. As we're about to discover, the community that created the sacred burial ground was part of a much larger network of Neanderthal societies spread across Europe and Asia, societies that shared not just genetic heritage, but cultural innovations, caregiving traditions, and a capacity for cooperation that would ultimately help shape the course of human evolution. The care that kept Nandy and Shanidar Z alive was about to become the foundation for something even more extraordinary. The first evidence of organized community life that would challenge everything we thought we knew about prehistoric social development. The Shanidar family wasn't an isolated group struggling alone in the wilderness, and they were part of something far more remarkable, a sophisticated social network that spanned the ancient world, connected by bonds of mutual care that would become the foundation of human civilization itself. Picture daily life in the Shanidar community 50,000 years ago. Dawn breaks over the Zagros Mountains, and the cave comes alive with purposeful activity. But this isn't the chaotic scramble for individual survival we might expect. Instead, we see something revolutionary: organized cooperation on a scale never before documented in prehistoric humans. Hunting parties form not around the strongest individuals, but around complementary skills. The keen-eyed tracker pairs with the patient stalker. The master toolmaker ensures everyone has properly hafted spears. Even disabled Nandy contributes, using his accumulated decades of knowledge to predict animal movements and identify the most promising hunting grounds. When the hunters return with meat, something extraordinary happens. The food isn't hoarded by those who made the kill. Instead, is distributed according to need. Elderly members receive choice portions. Nursing mothers get extra fat for energy. Children are fed first, their growing bodies prioritized over adult hunger. This wasn't random kindness. This was systematic social organization based on principles we still recognize today, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. Gathering expeditions reveal the same cooperative spirit. Knowledgeable elders like Shanidar Z would have been living libraries of botanical information, able to identify hundreds of edible plants, their seasonal availability, and proper preparation methods. This knowledge was freely shared, taught to children through hands-on experience that turned survival into education. But perhaps most remarkably, no one was left behind. When the community moved to follow seasonal game migrations, the injured moved with them. When resources grew scarce, the vulnerable were protected, not abandoned. When predators threatened, the strong defended the weak without question. This level of social cooperation required something unprecedented in the animal kingdom: the ability to see beyond immediate self-interest to long-term community benefit. It demanded emotional intelligence, empathy, and what we now recognize as moral reasoning. The evidence for this sophisticated social behavior isn't just theoretical. DNA analysis reveals that the Shanidar individuals were part of an extended family network spanning multiple generations. Isotope studies of their teeth show they shared similar diets throughout their lives, indicating long-term community membership rather than temporary alliances. Most remarkably, tool analysis reveals that different community members specialized in different crafts, with their products shared throughout the group. Some individuals excelled at stone knapping, others at hide preparation, still others at bone carving. This wasn't just division of labor, it was the birth of economic interdependence. But the true measure of Neanderthal social advancement lies in how they treated their most vulnerable members. Multiple individuals at Shanidar show evidence of surviving serious injuries with community support. Shanidar 3 had a healed spear wound to his ribs. Shanidar 5 shows signs of a severe leg injury that required weeks of care to heal properly. This pattern repeats across Neanderthal sites throughout Europe and Asia. At La Ferracie in France, archaeologists found evidence of families caring for disabled children. In Spain, Neanderthal sites show elderly individuals who survived well beyond their physical prime, sustained by community care. The implications are staggering. These findings push the origins of organized healthcare, social welfare systems, and disability accommodation back 50,000 years. Neanderthals weren't just surviving, they were creating the first known examples of universal care, proving that compassion isn't a modern human invention but an ancient inheritance. Today, DNA evidence reveals that Nandy's legacy lives in us in the most literal sense possible. Between 1 to 4% of non-African human DNA carries Neanderthal genes. Every heartbeat pumps blood that carries genetic material from Shanidar Cave. Every breath is taken with lungs that inherited Neanderthal adaptations to cold climates. This genetic legacy isn't just biological, it's behavioral. Recent studies suggest that Neanderthal genes may influence modern human traits like immune function, pain sensitivity, and even aspects of social behavior. The care that kept Nandy alive may have literally shaped the way we care for each other today. The discovery of sophisticated tools found near disabled individuals demonstrates that Neanderthals didn't just care for the vulnerable, they innovated to make their lives easier. Specialized cutting implements designed for one-handed use, modified hunting weapons that could be operated despite physical limitations, adaptive technologies that anticipated needs and solved problems with remarkable ingenuity. This evidence challenges the long-held assumption that advanced social behavior was unique to Homo sapiens. Instead, it reveals Neanderthals as complex beings with deep emotional lives, capable of expressions of care, belief, and ritual that rival anything in the modern world. Their cognitive abilities included characteristics we consider fundamentally human: humility in recognizing their interdependence, compassion for those who couldn't care for themselves, and wisdom in understanding that individual survival depended on collective success. But the Shanidar community's sophistication extended beyond care for the vulnerable. Archaeological evidence suggests they had developed complex cultural traditions around food, ceremony, and seasonal celebration. Hearth patterns indicate communal cooking events that brought the entire community together. Tool caches suggest shared ownership of valuable resources. Most remarkably, the repeated use of sacred burial grounds like the boulder site indicates that Neanderthal communities maintained cultural continuity across multiple generations. Children grew up learning not just survival skills, but cultural values, family histories, and social expectations that connected them to their ancestors and prepared them to care for future generations. The care networks that sustain Nandy and Shanidar Z weren't unique to their cave. Similar patterns of community support appear throughout the Neanderthal archaeological record, suggesting that this level of social organization was a species-wide characteristic, not an isolated development. This social sophistication was about to enable something even more remarkable than individual survival. The communities that cared for their vulnerable members were the same communities that would develop the world's most advanced food preparation techniques, creating culinary traditions so sophisticated they would make modern chefs weep with envy, because when you care enough to keep someone alive, you care enough to make their life worth living, and that means making food that doesn't just sustain but satisfies. When archaeologists first analyzed charred remains from Shanidar Cave's ancient hearths, they expected to find evidence of basic survival, maybe some burnt animal bones, perhaps a few seeds accidentally dropped in the fire. What they discovered instead revolutionized our understanding of prehistoric cuisine, and it revealed that Nandy's people were the world's first gourmet chefs. Nandy's diet was far more diverse and sophisticated than we ever imagined. Yes, there were wild goats, small animals, fruits, seeds, and plants, but that was just the beginning of a culinary story that would make modern food scientists weep with admiration. Recent discoveries at Shanidar Cave itself have uncovered something extraordinary. 70,000 years ago, Neanderthals were cooking beans and legumes with the skill of trained chefs. This represents the earliest direct evidence outside Africa of complex plant processing for food, pushing back the origins of sophisticated cooking by tens of thousands of years. But here's what makes this discovery truly remarkable. They weren't just boiling beans. They were creating complex, multi-ingredient meals that required advanced understanding of food science, nutrition, and flavor chemistry. The Neanderthal soaked and pounded pulses to remove their natural bitterness, a technique that requires understanding toxic compounds in raw legumes and how to neutralize them. They combined these processed beans with wild peas, creating protein-complete meals that modern nutritionists would applaud. But they didn't stop there. Wild grasses were added for texture and additional nutrients. Wild mustard provided spice and flavor complexity. Seeds from various plants contributed healthy fats and micronutrients. This wasn't random foraging thrown together over a fire. This was sophisticated recipe development based on deep understanding of taste, nutrition, and food chemistry. The implications are staggering. These meals required planning, patience, and knowledge that had to be passed down through generations. Someone had to discover that bitter, potentially toxic legumes became delicious and nutritious when properly processed. Someone had to experiment with flavor combinations and cooking techniques until they achieved the perfect balance. This level of culinary sophistication required what food scientists call hierarchical recipe thinking, the ability to envision multiple preparation steps leading to a complex final product, each step building on the previous one to achieve a specific goal. In Shanidar Cave, archaeologists found approximately a dozen hearths intentionally built and used over thousands of years. These weren't simple campfires, they were sophisticated cooking installations, each one a testament to Neanderthal engineering and culinary expertise. These distinctive basin-like circular structures were carefully constructed and filled with the remains of countless meals. As archaeologist Diego Angelucci explains, we found burnt bones, burnt wood, and ash remains, and the rock underneath has been reddened by the heat This is a crucial detail because it tells us that the structure is in a primary position, and it has always been there. Each hearth represents a kitchen that served the Shanidar community for generations. The reddened stone beneath proves these weren't temporary campfires, but permanent cooking installations carefully maintained and continuously used by families who understood that good food was worth the investment in proper infrastructure. Fire was far more than a survival tool for these ancient chefs. It was the foundation of their social life. The hearths created comfortable gathering spaces where the community came together not just to eat, but to socialize, share stories, and strengthen the bonds that held their society together. Fire gave them something we still cherish today, the concept of home. But what exactly were they cooking with such care and sophistication? The menu at Shanidar Cave reads like a prehistoric fine dining experience. Cooked goats, deer, horses, aurochs, those magnificent extinct wild bulls, rhinos, and even turtles, which were probably laid on their shells and slow stewed on hot stones like prehistoric crock pots. The cooking techniques themselves demonstrate remarkable innovation. Hot stone cooking, placing heated rocks directly into cooking vessels or using them as cooking surfaces, requires understanding of thermal dynamics, temperature control, and timing that would challenge modern outdoor cooking enthusiasts. Evidence from coastal Neanderthal sites reveals even greater culinary diversity. Fish prepared using multiple cooking methods, mussels and mollusks steamed in their own shells, even roasted pine nuts, which require precise temperature control to avoid burning and release their oils properly. This wasn't subsistence eating, this was cuisine. These people understood that food could be more than fuel. It could be pleasure, comfort, and the expression of care for loved ones. Recent experimental archaeology has attempted to recreate Neanderthal cooking methods using period-appropriate tools and techniques. The results are stunning. Meals that are not only nutritious and satisfying, but genuinely delicious by modern standards. Dr. Mariana Nabaiz, who has experimented with Neanderthal-style bird preparation, explains the sophistication required. Using a flint flake for butchering required significant precision and effort, which we had not fully valued before this experiment. The flakes were sharper than we initially thought, requiring careful handling to make precise cuts without injuring our own fingers. This precision extended to every aspect of food preparation. Nandy and his community crafted sophisticated tools specifically designed for different culinary tasks, specialized cutting implements for different types of meat, scrapers designed to process plant fibers, bone marrow extractors that could access the richest nutrients with minimal waste. Most remarkably, they used beeswax to attach stone blades to wooden handles, creating composite cooking tools that were both durable and efficient. This represents advanced material science applied to culinary technology, understanding adhesive properties, thermal expansion, and tool ergonomics. The food processing techniques themselves reveal deep understanding of chemistry and nutrition. Bone marrow was extracted and processed to create high-energy survival foods. Hides were prepared not just for clothing, but as cooking containers that could be heated with hot stones to create portable kitchens. Plant processing required even more sophisticated knowledge. Different plants had to be harvested at specific times for optimal nutrition and flavor. Some required soaking to remove toxins, others needed grinding or pounding to make them digestible. Still others required specific cooking techniques to unlock their nutritional potential. The evidence suggests that Neanderthal communities developed regional cooking traditions based on local ingredients and seasonal availability. Mediterranean coastal groups became experts at seafood preparation. Mountain communities specialized in game cooking and plant processing. Each group developed techniques optimized for their specific environment and resources. This culinary knowledge was clearly passed down through generations with the same care given to tool-making and hunting techniques. Children learned not just what to eat, but how to prepare it properly, how to combine ingredients for maximum nutrition and flavor, and how to adapt recipes based on available ingredients. Archaeological evidence shows that different hearths in the same cave were used for different cooking purposes. Some specialized in slow cooking tough cuts of meat, others were optimized for plant processing, still others were designed for quick, high-heat cooking that would sear meat while preserving juices. This level of culinary organization suggests that Neanderthal communities had developed what we might recognize as the first known restaurant kitchen systems, specialized cooking stations, each optimized for specific types of food preparation. The sophistication extends even to food storage and preservation. Evidence suggests that Neanderthals understood smoking, drying, and fermentation techniques that could preserve food for extended periods. This required understanding bacterial processes, moisture control, and temperature management that rivals modern food preservation methods. But perhaps most remarkably, isotope analysis of Neanderthal teeth reveals that even disabled community members like Nandy maintained the same diverse, nutritious diet as healthy individuals throughout their lives. This means that the community's culinary expertise was applied not just to survival, but to ensuring that every member enjoyed the same quality of life through food. The care taken in food preparation for vulnerable community members goes beyond mere sustenance. It represents understanding that dignity includes the right to enjoy meals, not just consume calories. This is perhaps the most human aspect of Neanderthal cuisine, the recognition that good food is an expression of love and care. Yet, even as we marvel at their culinary sophistication, we're only beginning to understand the full scope of Neanderthal cultural achievement, because the same communities that developed these advanced cooking techniques were simultaneously creating something even more extraordinary, the world's first art. Deep in caves across Europe, using the same fire that cooked their sophisticated meals, Neanderthals were painting masterpieces that would redefine our understanding of consciousness, creativity, and what it means to be human. In the flickering torchlight of Maltravieso Cave, 10 years ago, someone pressed their hand against the cold limestone wall and blew red ochre paint around their fingers. As the pigment settled and the hand was pulled away, humanity's first artwork was born. But the artist wasn't human as we understand it. It was a Neanderthal, creating beauty in absolute darkness 20,000 years before our species would even set foot in Europe. This single handprint would shatter everything we thought we knew about the origins of art, consciousness, and what it means to be human. Neanderthals had culture that extended far beyond survival. From the mysterious stone circles in Bruniquel Cave, France, structures built 176,000 years ago in chambers 300 meters from the cave entrance, requiring sophisticated planning and lighting technology, to intricate jewelry made from eagle talons, bare teeth, and carved shells, these ancient people were creating objects of beauty and meaning with the same passion that drives artists today. But the most groundbreaking discoveries come from Spain, where recent dating techniques have revealed cave paintings that predate any known Homo sapiens presence in Europe by tens of thousands of years. At Maltravieso Cave in Extremadura, those red hand stencils we mentioned, dated to 66 to 710 years ago using uranium-thorium analysis, represent not just humanity's first art, but its first declaration of individual existence. Each handprint is unique, like a prehistoric signature saying, I was here, I mattered, I existed. Think about what it took to create these images. The artist had to venture deep into pitch-black caves, carrying fire for light. They had to prepare pigments by grinding ochre and mixing it with water or saliva. They had to understand that blowing paint around an object would create a lasting image, a sophisticated grasp of negative space and artistic technique. This wasn't random decoration. This was intentional art creation requiring planning, skill, and abstract thinking. At La Pasiga Cave, also in Spain, archaeologists discovered something even more extraordinary, a red, ladder-shaped symbol painted 6,800 years ago. Vertical and horizontal lines intersect in perfect geometric precision, created in the complete darkness of the cave with only flickering torch flames for illumination. Picture the scene, a Neanderthal artist deep underground, holding a primitive torch in one hand while carefully applying red pigment with the other. Every line had to be deliberate. Every stroke required intention. In that darkness, they were creating something that would outlast their civilization by 65,000 years. The geometric nature of the symbol is crucial. These aren't accidental marks or random scratches. The lines intersect at precise angles, creating a pattern that shows mathematical understanding and aesthetic intention. This is evidence of a mind capable of abstract thought, symbolic representation, and artistic planning. In France, the cave of La Roche-Cotard revealed finger engravings from 57,000 years ago that show an even more organized approach to art creation. These weren't random scratches made by desperate people trying to escape boredom. Analysis shows a thoughtful, systematic approach, lines organized into panels, sequences that suggest narrative or symbolic meaning. The number of lines, their organization, and their succession throughout the cave testify to deliberate artistic vision. These lines were not made at random. They represent some of the earliest evidence of planned artistic expression in human history. But here's what makes these discoveries truly revolutionary. The significance isn't just that Neanderthals could paint. The significance is that they were engaging in symbolism, and that capacity for symbolic thinking is probably directly related to the development of language. When you create a symbol, you're demonstrating the ability to let one thing represent another. A handprint represents the person who made it. A geometric pattern represents an idea or concept. This cognitive leap from concrete thinking to abstract representation is the same mental process that underlies language development. If Neanderthals were creating symbols 66,000 years ago, they almost certainly had the cognitive capacity for complex language. They could think in metaphors, understand that sounds could represent objects and ideas, and communicate abstract concepts to others. The handprints, pigments, and mysterious symbols found across Europe show that Neanderthals possessed imagination and symbolic thinking long before Homo sapiens arrived. They were creating art not because they had learned it from us, but because the capacity for artistic expression was already fully developed in their minds. At Unicorn Cave in Germany, archaeologists discovered a giant deer toe bone with carefully carved chevron patterns dating to 51,000 years ago, when only Neanderthals occupied the site. This represents some of the oldest symbolic objects known to science. The bone had been brought from far away, selected specifically for carving, and marked with deliberate patterns that took considerable time and effort to create. Think about the implications. This wasn't utilitarian toolmaking. This was art for art's sake, beauty created simply because someone felt compelled to make something beautiful. The Spanish cave discoveries have forced archaeologists to completely reconsider the timeline of human artistic development. For decades, we believed that the great cave paintings of Lascaux and Chauvet, created by Homo sapiens 17,000, 37,000 years ago, represented the dawn of human artistic expression. Now we know that Neanderthals were painting masterpieces 30,000 years before Lascaux was even conceived. This artistic tradition wasn't limited to painting. Archaeological evidence reveals that Neanderthals created the world's first jewelry, fashioning necklaces from eagle talons that required considerable skill to perforate without breaking. And they used mineral pigments not just for cave painting, but possibly for body decoration, the world's first makeup and fashion. In Gibraltar, Neanderthals harvested bird feathers, possibly for ceremonial headdresses or capes. They understood that certain objects carried symbolic weight beyond their practical function. A eagle talon wasn't just a sharp implement, it was a symbol of power, hunting prowess, or spiritual connection to the natural world. But perhaps most remarkably, recent analysis suggests that when early Homo sapiens finally arrived in Europe around 45,000 years ago, they encountered caves already adorned with Neanderthal art. Imagine that first meeting, our ancestors discovering that these robust, heavy-browed people they'd encountered weren't primitive brutes, but fellow artists who had been creating beauty for tens of thousands of years. Some researchers now theorize that early humans learned artistic techniques from Neanderthals, not the other way around. The sophisticated use of ochre pigments, the understanding of cave acoustics for optimal painting locations, the development of torch technology for deep cave exploration, all of these may have been Neanderthal innovations that our species adopted and refined. This represents one of the first known examples of cross-species cultural transmission, the transfer of artistic knowledge between different human populations that would ultimately shape the trajectory of all human creative expression. The cave art also reveals sophisticated understanding of the spiritual and ceremonial uses of underground spaces. Many of the painted caves show evidence of repeated visits over thousands of years, suggesting they served as sacred sites where Neanderthal communities gathered for rituals, ceremonies, or spiritual practices we can only imagine. The acoustic properties of these painted chambers are remarkable. Many feature natural resonance that would amplify voices or sounds, suggesting they may have been used for singing, chanting, or musical performances that accompanied the artistic creation. In some caves, the placement of artwork corresponds precisely with areas of optimal acoustics, indicating that Neanderthal artists understood the relationship between visual and auditory experiences in creating immersive ceremonial spaces. Nandy's world wasn't just about survival, it was rich with meaning, beauty, and artistic expression that connected individuals to their community, their environment, and perhaps to spiritual beliefs that helped them make sense of existence in a harsh and unpredictable world. They were the world's first artists, venturing into absolute darkness to create beauty that would survive long after their civilization had vanished. In those painted caves, they left messages that transcend time. We were here, we created, we mattered, we were human. These discoveries force us to abandon the notion that art and symbolic thought were unique to Homo sapiens. Neanderthals were artists tens of thousands of years before we developed our own artistic traditions. They were the pioneers of human creative expression, the first to understand that life could be about more than mere survival. But even as we marvel at their artistic achievements, we're about to discover that the Neanderthal story is far from over, because the same minds that created the world's first art were about to encounter something that would change the course of human history forever. Us. The meeting between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens wouldn't be a simple conquest or replacement. It would be a complex dance of cooperation, competition, and ultimately integration that would create the modern human genome and establish patterns of interaction that continue to shape our species today. Nandy lived during one of the most pivotal moments in human history, the Great Convergence. Around 50,000 years ago, as he grew old in his beloved Shanidar Cave, our species, Homo sapiens, was beginning its exodus from Africa, spreading across the world in waves of migration that would forever change the story of humanity. This wasn't the collision of alien species meeting for the first time. This was a family reunion 500,000 years in the making. When these two populations finally encountered each other in the valleys and caves of Europe and Asia, something extraordinary happened. They didn't just fight or compete. They recognized something familiar in each other. They met, they lived together, they fell in love, and they created children who carried the genetic legacy of both lineages. The DNA evidence is undeniable. Between 1 and 4% of every non-African person's genome comes directly from Neanderthals. This is an ancient history. This is living biology. Nandy's genes flow through the bloodstream of billions of people alive today, influencing everything from immune function to cold tolerance to pain sensitivity. Recent genetic analysis has revealed that some Neanderthal DNA segments provide crucial advantages for modern humans. Neanderthal genes help us fight off viruses, adapt to high altitudes, and survive in cold climates. Far from being evolutionary dead weight, Neanderthal inheritance made our species stronger and more adaptable, but the integration wasn't always smooth or simple. Meet Thorin, the last known Neanderthal, discovered in France's Rhone Valley. Living between 52,000 and 42,000 years ago, Thorin represents the final chapter of pure Neanderthal existence, and his story reveals the complex dynamics of this ancient encounter. Thorin's DNA tells a haunting tale. His lineage shows extreme inbreeding, suggesting his population had become isolated and was struggling to survive. Yet, remarkably, other Neanderthal groups lived nearby. Why didn't they interbreed? Why did some Neanderthal communities remain separate while others integrated with Homo sapiens? The answer may lie in cultural differences, geographic barriers, or perhaps deliberate choices about maintaining distinct identities. Thorin's people may have been the last holdouts, clinging to pure Neanderthal traditions even as the world around them changed. But here's where the story becomes remarkable. Perhaps most Neanderthals didn't go extinct at all. Perhaps they integrated so completely with Homo sapiens that extinction became evolution. Their genes, their knowledge, their cultural innovations absorbed into a new hybrid humanity that combined the best of both lineages. This integration may represent one of evolution's greatest success stories. Instead of one species conquering another, we see sophisticated populations sharing knowledge, techniques, and genetic advantages to create something more resilient than either group could have achieved alone. The evidence for cultural transmission is overwhelming. The oldest jewelry found in burial sites belongs to Neanderthals. Eagle talon necklaces, perforated shells, carved bone ornaments that predate similar Homo sapiens artifacts by tens of thousands of years. The concept of personal adornment, of using objects to express identity and status, may have been passed from them to us. Cave art follows the same pattern. Neanderthal paintings in Spain predate any known Homo sapiens art by 20,000 years. When early modern humans arrived in Europe around 45,000 years ago, they encountered caves already adorned with sophisticated artwork, handprints, geometric patterns, and symbolic representations that would have served as powerful examples of what was possible with pigment and imagination. Picture that first encounter, Homo sapiens explorers venturing into a European cave, torch flames revealing walls covered in ancient art. These weren't primitive scratches. These were sophisticated compositions that demonstrated advanced artistic thinking. Observing these creations almost certainly inspired our ancestors to develop their own artistic traditions. If this theory holds true, it marks one of the first known examples of cross-species cultural influence in human history. Neanderthals weren't just genetic contributors to modern humanity, they were our teachers, showing us techniques and concepts that would become fundamental to human civilization. The implications extend far beyond art and jewelry. Neanderthal innovations in cooking, toolmaking, social organization, and care for vulnerable community members may have provided the cultural foundation upon which modern human societies were built. Recent archaeological discoveries suggest that early Homo sapiens and Neanderthal communities sometimes lived in the same regions for thousands of years, creating opportunities for extensive cultural exchange. Tool technologies, hunting strategies, even medicinal plant knowledge may have flowed between populations in both directions. Modern genetic analysis reveals that Neanderthal Homo sapiens interbreeding wasn't a rare occurrence. It happened repeatedly over tens of thousands of years across multiple continents. This suggests ongoing relationships between communities, not just occasional encounters between isolated groups. But perhaps most importantly, the Neanderthal legacy challenges our understanding of what it means to be human. Nandy's story, his survival despite catastrophic injuries, his community's sophisticated care systems, their artistic achievements and culinary innovations reveals that the traits we consider fundamentally human aren't unique to Homo sapiens. Compassion, creativity, the ability to care for vulnerable community members, the drive to create beauty even in harsh circumstances, these characteristics are ancient, reaching back through our evolutionary history to unite all human populations in a shared heritage of humanity. Nandy's life reminds us that humanity has always been about connection, care, and adaptation. His broken body, sustained by community love for decades, represents the same values that drive modern medicine, social welfare systems, and disability rights movements. The care that kept him alive established patterns of human behavior that continue today. The artistic innovations of his people live on in every museum, every gallery, every moment when humans choose to create beauty rather than simply survive. The cooking techniques developed around Shanidar hearths echo in every kitchen where families gather to share meals and strengthen bonds. Modern humans aren't the victors in some ancient evolutionary struggle. We're the inheritors of a collaborative process that combined the best traits from multiple human populations. Neanderthal strength and cold adaptation, Homo sapiens innovation and mobility. Together, these create a hybrid humanity more capable than either ancestor alone. Today, as we face global challenges that require unprecedented cooperation and care for vulnerable populations, Nandy's story offers profound inspiration. His community proved that survival isn't just about individual strength, it's about collective compassion, shared knowledge, and the understanding that every life has value regardless of physical capability. The Neanderthal legacy lives in our DNA, our art, our capacity for love and care. But as we're about to discover, this ancient story of cooperation and integration offers crucial lessons for our modern world. lessons about what it truly means to be human, and how the choices we make today will shape the future of our species just as profoundly as the choices made by Nandy and his people 50,000 years ago. Nandy endured pain, loss, and hardship, yet he lived with ingenuity, love, and resilience that would define what it means to be human for all time. As we stand at the end of his remarkable story, we're not just looking back 50,000 years, we're looking into ourselves, seeing the ancient roots of everything we hold dear about humanity. Shanidar Z, the woman who lay beside him in that sacred cave, reminds us that care and family tradition are at the core of humanity, not just Homo sapiens, but all humans. Her gentle burial with a stone pillow and her hand curled beneath her head speaks to a tenderness that transcends species, that connects us across an almost incomprehensible span of time. These weren't primitive brutes struggling in darkness. They were people who understood love, loss, and the importance of dignity in death. Their story shows us that human nature, compassion, creativity, the drive to survive against impossible odds, is ancient beyond our wildest imagination. The same impulse that drove Nandy's community to care for his broken body for decades drives us to build hospitals, create social safety nets, and fight for the rights of the disabled. The same creativity that led Neanderthals to paint the world's first art in pitch-black caves drives every artist, musician, and storyteller alive today. Neanderthals, far from being evolutionary failures, emerged from the caves of Shanidar as visionary creators who helped shape the course of human history. They were the first to understand that life could be about more than mere survival, that it could include beauty, meaning, and care for others that transcended immediate self-interest. They painted in darkness not because they had to, but because they felt compelled to create something beautiful, something lasting, something that said, "We were here, we mattered, we were human." Art, it seems, is not unique to Homo sapiens, but a shared heritage that connects us to our closest evolutionary cousins. When early modern humans arrived in Europe 45,000 years ago and found caves already adorned with sophisticated artwork, they weren't discovering primitive scratches. They were encountering masterpieces created by fellow artists who had been perfecting their craft for tens of thousands of years. The evidence is overwhelming. Neanderthals were our teachers as much as our ancestors. They showed us how to make jewelry from eagle talons, how to cook complex meals with multiple ingredients, how to care for the vulnerable, how to create beauty in the darkest places. The techniques we learned from them became the foundation of human civilization itself. Shanidar Cave forces us to fundamentally rethink what it means to be human. Rather than two different species locked in some prehistoric battle for survival, we see two forms of the same human family, each contributing unique strengths to create something more resilient and capable than either could have achieved alone. Neanderthal physical adaptations combined with Homo sapiens innovation and mobility to create modern humanity, a hybrid species that carries the best traits of both lineages. The scientific evidence supports this revolutionary understanding. We are not pure Homo sapiens, we are a fusion species. Between 1 and 4% of every non-African person's genome comes directly from Neanderthals. Their genes help us fight viruses, survive in cold climates, and adapt to high altitudes. Their DNA flows through the bloodstream of billions of people alive today, making us stronger, more adaptable, more human. But the Neanderthal legacy extends far beyond genetics. In every act of compassion toward the vulnerable, we echo the care that kept Nandy alive. In every work of art created in difficult circumstances, we honor the Neanderthal artists who painted beauty in absolute darkness. In every meal shared with family, we continue traditions that began around Shanidar's ancient hearths. As we face modern challenges, climate change, global inequality, care for aging populations, Nandy's story offers profound guidance. His community proved that true strength comes not from individual prowess, but from collective compassion. They showed us that every life has value regardless of physical capability, that knowledge and wisdom matter more than brute force, that love can sustain us through the darkest times. The massive boulder that marked their sacred burial ground still stands in Shanidar Cave today, a monument to 50,000 years of human devotion. When archaeologists first found it, they discovered that countless Neanderthal hands had touched and smoothed its surface over millennia. Each generation had added their own small contribution to this sacred stone, creating a testament to continuity, memory, and the enduring power of family bonds. In every heartbeat and every breath, we carry a piece of Nandy's and Shanidar Z's legacy. They live on in us, in our DNA, in our art, in the way we care for each other. Their lives are proof that love, creativity, and compassion aren't modern inventions. They're ancient gifts from our shared ancestors, traits that define us as human regardless of which branch of the human family tree we trace our origins to. More than different species, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens were different human forms, united by the same fundamental capacity to create, to care, and to leave our mark on the world. The story of Shanidar Cave isn't just about the past. It's about recognizing that the choices we make today, the compassion we show to the vulnerable, the art we create, and the love we share will echo through time just as powerfully as the choices made by Nandy and his people. The fire that warmed Shanidar Cave 50,000 years ago still burns in every human heart. The hands that painted the world's first art still guide every brushstroke, every sculpture, every creative act. The love that sustained a disabled man for decades still drives every doctor, every caregiver, every person who chooses compassion over convenience. We are Nandy's children, inheritors of a legacy that stretches back through the mists of prehistory to the very dawn of human consciousness. In choosing to care for each other, to create beauty, to preserve knowledge and pass it to the next generation, we honor not just our Homo sapiens ancestors, but the Neanderthal family that showed us what it truly means to be human. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through time, for allowing us to share the remarkable story of Nandy and the Shanidar family. Their story is our story, a testament to the enduring power of human love, creativity, and resilience that connects us all across the vast expanse of time. If this story moved you as much as it moved us, please subscribe to First Flame and join our community of explorers who are passionate about uncovering the true stories of our prehistoric ancestors. There are so many more incredible tales waiting to be told, so many more discoveries that will change how we understand ourselves and our place in the human story. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and help us bring these amazing stories of human resilience and ingenuity to light. Because in understanding our past, we better understand ourselves, and that knowledge has never been more important than it is today.